Hi, welcome to this session on network security and forensics. This is a part of the information security 4 course. The third kind of stuff that you can do, for example, is denial of service. Now, this can be protected using an IDS. Okay. So, the idea behind denial of service is that you ensure that your network service is unusable. Okay. For example, if I have TCP, so it's a kind of, you would have watched it in movies where someone tries to greet the other person, one person says this, the other person says this, and both of them do not converge. So, it's the SYN flooding is similar to that. For example, in TCP protocol, you send a SYN packet and then you get a SYN plus ACK and then you are supposed to ACK. Now, suppose I send a SYN packet and then the other guy sends a SYN plus ACK packet, then now I do not ACK. So, what will happen? The other guy will be expecting a response from me. What happens to the other person is that he is expecting an ACK. So, he might be reserving certain kinds of resources, and if I do not send him an ACK, he will be keeping those resources for a certain period of time. Suppose I send lot of SYN packets. Okay. So, since he is keeping the resources for a certain period of time, the system might run out of resources, and because of which no other connection for a certain period of time can happen. So, what I will do is after a certain period of time I will stop this attack. Now, after at that time other connections will be accepted again after a certain time. So, if I do it in random fashion, the whole availability will be at risk of the machine. So, this can be detected by intrusion detection systems and we can prevent it. Okay, here is an example of ICMP Echo. Okay, so, here what we actually do is a perpetrator, okay, what he does is he makes he gets access to all the other machines and asks them to do a ping. Okay, so, what will happen is that once I do this, every machine will do a ping to this victim, and thereby this guy generating one packet and then making this he can actually make it attack at a certain time also. Okay, so, what will happen is suddenly this guy will start getting lot of ping packets. Okay, so, this kind of stuff can be done. You can also spoof a source address of a victim and ensure that he is denied certain kind of service, because this network, you all know that if the network is bandwidth is full, you will not be able to download movies or anything. It is just similar to that. The other kind of attack that people can do is the TCP connections. Okay, each TCP connection has an associated state, sequence number, etc. Okay, what if an attacker learns these values? Okay. So, what will I do once I learn these values? Then I will know, for example, HTTP is from port 80. So, what I will know is if port 80 is open, then you know that some kind of HTTP service is expected on that port. Now, what I can do is I can write a software, okay, and then start attacking the port 80, HTTP port 80. So, then if I come to know that sequence numbers are chosen in some predictable way, then I can generate those sequence number and send my own data. So, what will happen is the other person on the other side will start accepting the data, my data, and totally, even if it is a software or anything, it will get confused, because it was expecting some other data with this sequence number, but I am sending a different data with the same sequence number. So, all these types of attacks can happen with TCP. Okay. If I know what is going to be the state of the connection, then I will be able to hack that state and I will be able to hack that connection also. So, in this way the attacker can insert some kind of a malicious data, and say for example, it is a banking transaction. Okay. Instead of saying 50 rupees, I make it as 5,000 rupees. Okay. And if I can insert this kind of malicious data, then I will be able to become extremely rich very quickly. So, in this way, if I can intercept the TCP connection, I will be able to do lot of harm to the other person. So, if this is the way, for example, there is a web server and then there is a trusting web client. Let us assume that instead of directly communicating, these two guys directly communicating, someone, a malicious user, say, sits in between, then this malicious user can actually eavesdrop. So, he has a bigger ear, so that he will be able to listen to all the conversations happening between these two types of people. That is one type of actor. There are many types of attacks. Okay. We will see what are the types of attacks in the future courses, and what we will be concentrating on. See, the idea behind this sessions are that you need to understand how network forensics can help you detect these kind of attacks. Okay. So, one of the ways you can prevent this kind of eavesdropping from happening is known as IPsec. Okay. So, this IPsec provides you source authentication. Okay. So, to ensure that you know that the person to whom you are talking is well known to you, and it also encrypts the data before transport. So, that the person in between cannot listen to what the other two people are talking. The other type of attack is packet sniffing, and in fact, we will be using a tool known as Wireshark, and we will be doing packet sniffing. So, the idea behind packet sniffing is that you want to get what kind of data is going through in my network, and sometimes it so happens that some of the email passwords will be sent in plain text. For example, if you remember the previous diagram that we saw, there was this demilitarized zone where there was this email server. Many organizations have their own local email server, and in the local email server they might be actually sending password in plain text. You do not have to worry about Google, because Google uses HTTPS, which is but if you are not using Google kind of as a public email client, your organization's own client, if someone sniffs into the network, they will be able to get the passwords, especially many of the SNMP protocols and things like that, they actually encode, but those encoding are easy to break. So, passwords are the most popular places where people look at and try to find out when they do a packet sniffing attack. And as I told you, people can also be as dangerous. So, people can be lied to, they can be manipulated, they can be bribed, they can be threatened, harmed, tortured, etc. Most of the humans so will break down at a harm stage. For example, I mean, you can always go in and accepting that my computer is not hacked, but at one point if your personal data goes out, you feel that yes, there is something that has happened here. So, anyway, so the social engineering attacks is also very important. We will not be covering any of the social engineering attack, we will be restricting ourselves to network attacks and network forensics. So, the question is, what is network forensics? Network forensics is a sub branch of digital forensics relating to monitoring and analysis of computer network traffic for the purpose of information gathering, legal evidence and intrusion detection. So, if you remember the previous areas where we are talking about network security, in this model, see, network security is looking at a secure architecture. How do you connect computer systems and how do you get secure protocols? B, how do you prevent attacks from happening by using these secure protocols? Now, let us suppose that an incident has happened, someone has hacked into your network, then we will have to identify what has gone wrong into the and why our security mechanisms were breached, because once the breach happens, then it can lead to data loss. As we had seen, data loss can lead to monetary losses. Therefore, it is necessary that we identify what is the breach and how do we ensure that this kind of breach never happens. So, the area which helps you to identify what is the breach, how it has happened, is network forensics. Once I identify that something has happened, first part in this is I have to gather all the information on how an attack has happened. The second part is that I have to give a legal evidence in the court of law, because any thief who does an abnormal activity denies having done that activity, and it is true everywhere in a legal system. So, therefore, it is the burden of the person accusing to prove that something bad has happened, and for that you need legal evidence. Therefore, you have to collect the data carefully, you can store it carefully, you have to transport it carefully to ensure that there is no leak in the data that you collect, or someone does not manipulate with your authentic data that you collect out of this information gathering activities. And finally, your legal evidence has to show that there is some kind of harm that has happened, some kind of intrusion that has happened into the network. So, your intrusion network forensics includes all the three activities: information gathering, legal evidence and intrusion detection. So, you collect data traffic, computer network traffic, to ensure that if a person has hacked into a network, he is legally punished for his wrongdoing. The first thing that we should understand is what is an evidence. There are different types of evidences that one can come across. One is the first one is the real evidence, where you have physical objects that play a relevant role in the crime. For example, a USB drive that was inserted, or a physical hard disk drive that you can produce in the court of law. So, these are all real evidence. For example, I had stored a malicious software, or I had transferred data for which I have no access, I should not be having access, I have that data in my hard disk. So, in that case what I can do is I can bring my hard disk and then show that yes, this data was not supposed to have been accessed by me, but it is there in my hard disk. The second evidence is the best evidence that can be produced in court. Okay, for example, a file that was recovered, okay, or email that was recovered, and bit by bit snapshot of some network transactions that had happened, etc. The third one is the direct evidence, where an eyewitness can come and say that yes, I saw this guy typing the password and doing these kind of illegal activities, etc. The fourth is known as circumstantial evidence. Okay. So, these are evidences that are linked with other evidence to draw a conclusion. For example, an email signature. Okay. So, if I had sent an email with my signature, okay, then it means that I have originated the data. Okay. Next is the, now this email signature, for example, if I had sent a digital signature, then it becomes one of the direct or the best evidence. Okay. But if I had sent just an email signature writing my name, then can only be considered as something that is circumstantial, because I could always claim in the court of law that someone had typed my name there. Okay. The next one is the business records. Okay. It is the logs or the routinely generated documentation, contracts, etc. Okay. And finally, you have the digital evidence, which is an electronic evidence such as signed emails, okay, signed documents, log files that we get out of intrusion detection prevention, firewalls or operating system, etc. So, these are all the different types of evidences that one can come across. Now, there is a difference between network forensics and something known as a dead box. Okay. In a dead box, for example, I just want to find out, okay, what is there in a hard disk. Okay. That is a kind of a dead box. Okay. For example, a data is static and preserved once power is removed. Okay. It is, for example, a hard disk is a kind of a dead box, where the data is static and once the power is removed, the data still exists there, and evidence is contained in the form of a file system. Okay. So, the advantage of having a dead box is that, okay, since you have the data that is available to you, you will be able to forensically analyze it and then get a sound image of what had happened. The other thing is, there is not much of a disruption of business, because once I find there are some digital evidences, I just take away this disk or something, or a USB or whatever it is, and then what I do is I can give them another disk where they can continue working. Okay. And this kind of dead box, there is always legal precedence in place. Okay. It is like keeping a kind of files, okay, the normal paper files for producing evidence. The network forensics, what happens in the network is the data is always changing constantly. I mean, you can see that the internet, lot of data gets transferred and these packets get intermingled in the internet, and in order to determine a flow, you just have to trace the packets of a particular ID, so that you get a kind of a flow. Whereas, if you take a dead box like let us say a hardware drive, okay, a hard disk drive, now set of a file that is related can also be traced something by using the super block or a blockchain, etc. I mean, I am not talking about the blockchain that we used in security aspect, I am talking about the chain of blocks. Now, pinpointing direct location is of needed evidence is problematic. One of the things that could happen with network forensics is that the timelines could lie in different time zones. Okay. For example, a data could have traveled from US to UK to Europe and then back to India. Okay. Now, look at, there are about 7 or 8 time zones that are involved when this data gets transferred. So, even if someone had mistakenly configured some time zone wrongly, people might say that it is not an acceptable evidence. So, that is the next problem, whereas in your hard disk, okay, many a time, okay, the files actually get stored along with the date and time stamp. The third one, physical access to network devices can be difficult, because network devices are owned by private companies, okay, in internet service providers, and they might not, and a law that is applicable in India may not be applicable abroad. Okay. So, you might have to have some kind of, see, we have seen that in many of the crimes that happen, okay, people go abroad and to bring them back to India, it becomes extremely difficult because of the lot of legalities that are involved. You have to prove that that person has done a crime, and then he has proved that he has gone out of, and those courts may not accept it, etc. Now, such problems can exist in terms of network also. Okay. The other point is that, well, we are collecting logs from network devices, but how long will these network devices store the logs? Because if you remember that the routers links have huge bandwidths, and storing all the data at that bandwidth will require enormous storage area, and the network devices does not have that much of storage area, they have very limited storage area. So, can you store all the logs? Usually they recycle the logs, and they might have logs for 24 hours or 1 week, etc. And so, you might have to take the data out of those boxes as quickly as possible. Okay, whereas this may not be the case with a hard disk drive evidence that you have at hand. The other aspect is that investigators must minimize investigation impact on the business network, okay, because I can't be injecting lot of packets and wasting the bandwidth of the company while trying to do an investigation. Okay, it is like you stamp over all the place of a crime scene, and then you find it difficult to identify who has done the crime. Okay. And today at least there is conflicting precedents over what data to collect, and then all these things have not been standardized anyway. Usually the investigative strategy is called OSCAR, where there are 5 stages. One is you obtain information, okay. 2 you strategize, and 3 you collect evidence, 4 you analyze, and then 5 you report. Now, all these things you do so that it forms a legal evidence. That means, not even at one point it should so happen that there is a leak, where say for example, either obtaining the information and strategizing it, everything should be authentic. So, what is obtaining the information? So, what you should do is you should have a brief description about the incident, what has happened, how a hack has happened, etc., and how someone discovered that such an incident has happened, whether known persons were involved in the incident, whether the system and or data are known to be involved. So, whether you know whether what is the data that has been lost, okay, what are the systems that have been compromised, etc. You should also obtain information about what the organization has done since the discovery of a data breach. Okay. So, whether they have removed access to the network, or they have only disconnected the network, or the company has shut down the whole network, etc. Then they should also study the impact of the potential legal issues. But if a data of a lot of subscribers have been compromised, then it could lead to lot of litigations. Therefore, you should look at potential legal issues that has occurred due to the breach of data. Okay, and you should also look at working time frame for investigation and resolution. You should say approximately you will be able to do this kind of work in this amount of time. You should also find out what are the specific goals of your investigation. I mean, you just can't be beating around the bush. One of the things you should take into account is that the data sizes can be huge. Okay. So, for example, a Blu-ray movie is around 3.7 GB, but if you look at a router that transfers petabytes per second of data, now I have given you the numbers. Okay. So, you have to multiply, that is 8 followed by so many zeros, and that is per second. So, you can find out how many bits of data is need to be stored, okay, to obtain the information. The second one is the environment. Okay. So, you should also study the organization's policies. Okay. What is the business model of the organization? What is the organization structure? What is the network topology that the organization has used? Okay, and what are all the possible network based evidences that you can get? See, remember, I mean, you should also look at camera based evidences, because if someone steals the data and puts it in a USB drive and takes it home, how will you prove it? I mean, you have to show that the person has entered that place, he has removed the USB drive, and then he has taken it home, etc. Then you should also look at the incident response management procedures. We should also look at available resources for, I mean, at the time of the incident and for the investigation, etc. The third one is strategizing the whole thing. Okay. You first have to identify and document evidence sources, and these evidences have to be preserved very, very carefully. There have been incidences where the investigating agencies have collected the data, they have kept it in a CD drive, okay, but when they come and show that in the court of the law, nothing comes out of the CD drive. Okay. So, for magnetic tapes for example, I mean you are carrying the magnetic tape in your hand, someone just puts a huge magnet in his pockets and walks by that tape, anything can happen, you know. So, these are some mechanisms of it people will try to tamper the evidences. The second one that you need to do is estimate the value of these evidences versus the value of obtaining it. Okay. So, if the value of the evidence is high, then you have to spend a lot of time to obtain the evidence. I mean usually that means the value of time that you spend could be high, but if the value of evidence is very low, then do not spend a lot of time to get that evidence. Okay. And you should actually, once you get the estimate of the value of the evidence, then you prioritize based on this estimate, like these are all the evidences that I must collect, this is a set of evidences that I may collect, and set of evidences that are good to have. Okay. So, you should also look at how you are going to acquire data and how you are going to do the analysis. Okay. And you need not be very stringent in any of these methodologies. Okay. You should be very flexible enough, but not too flexible. I mean these are all very generic terms, but you will come to know of it once we do some kind of case studies. The next one is collecting the evidence, and one of the most important thing is document. Okay. Whatever evidence you collect, it has to be documented. The second thing that you have to do is, as much as possible you have to do a lawful evidence capture. Okay. For example, one of the things that people do now is to find out whether the government has proceeded certain or is put an RTI. So, RTI is usually accepted as one of the legal evidence. The third one is, you should also have cryptographically verifiable copies of the evidences, and the evidences must be stored securely. The other most important part with evidence is, see, you should not trust anyone, okay, while handling evidence, because any human being can be compromised by social engineering strategies. Therefore, even if evidence is handed over from one person to another person, okay, that the chain of custody has to be established, okay, so that you can find out who exactly could have done something wrong while handing over the evidence. The next one you should look at is, you should always analyze copies of evidences, never use the original evidence to do some kind of an analysis. Make a copy of the original evidence and do the analysis, because if the original evidence is lost, your whole case is lost. You should also use legal tools, okay, and reputable tools. Reputation comes out of the tools performing well in case of getting in the evidence. So, I will not give much stress on reputable tools, but at least those tools should be legal, and please document every step of the work that you do. Finally, you have to do an analysis of the data that you have got. Okay. First foremost is separate interpretations from facts. Okay. It is told in Sherlock Holmes that when Dr. Watson asked how he is able to detect all these clues, he said, if I remove whatever is not possible, then what remains as impossible is the possibility. So, in that way, so you separate interpretations from your fact. Okay. So, find out what the facts are and get interpretations out of the facts and not your own interpretations, and think that okay, the fact will be there for my interpretation. One of the most important things for analysis is correlation. Okay. You have to correlate multiple sources of evidence. Okay. Just do not go with one evidence and say yes, I have found out what the problem is. Then you should have a documented timeline of activities. Now, we will do some case studies. Okay. We will see some case studies where we will see the importance of all this, because all these are kind of a soft skill. Okay. So, for example, corroborating all evidences, how do you do it? You have to use some kind of intuition as well as your skills to find how to corroborate these evidences. Okay. So, and then build working theories that can be backed up by the evidences. So, like do not interpret something. Okay. So, if you believe that this theory is workable, yes, then look at it as a fact and then look at the evidences. What is reasonable? Okay. So, one of the things that we said was, we said about documentation, we said how the organization has prepared itself. Okay. Some of the questions that you might ask the organization while doing the documentation is, first question is, have you provided appropriate budget for security? Okay. Because usually security takes a back seat. See, when there was this problem with year 2000 Y2K problem, okay, in which many of these IT engineers were involved. Okay. The impact that Y2K problem had was very low. So, some people started questioning, should we have spent so much money to overcome this Y2K problem. I mean, when you are very secure, okay, you will start questioning whether that much money was needed to provide a security, but even if there is one failure of security, you will say that okay, the budget was not enough. So, you need to be very careful. Security will cost you something. So, you have to find out whether appropriate budget has been provided by the organization for security. After the budget, second one is the training. Okay. Even though you might have lot of budget, you might try to buy lot of tools, but if the people do not know how to use those tools, then your security infrastructure is going to be a problem. Okay. The third one is, do you have up to date knowledge on the tool standards and does your organization provide these things. Now, fourth one is, if an impact happens, how do you manage the risk? Okay. So, were you prepared for the pre-planning of, say for example, if it is a bank, then you need to ensure that the transactions happen securely. Then you should also look at the type of risks, then what is the obligation. For example, suppose a data breach has happened, what is the obligation of the organization to the people who are affected by data breach? Do you tell them immediately, or and if you tell them immediately, what type of message do you tell them, etc. So, there are lot of other things that you need to look at. Okay. Internal walls within the organization is as important as an external wall. So, for example, what is the system level, application level and hardware level protection you are going to provide in your systems. Okay. The previous considerations were a kind of a soft skill kind of considerations. The current consideration like internal walls, etc., like system level, application level, hardware level protection is a kind of infrastructure kind of a protection. Okay. Then do you have cyber insurance? Okay. How will you hedge these risks? Okay. And reasoning and actions on how are they documented. Okay. So, something that has happened, how will you document all those things? Okay. Then you should also involve some kind of a third party audit. Okay. And it is similar to the ISO audits. Okay. You should also have a security audit of your organization about all these hardware, software, application level protection, etc. So, in this way, okay, what you could do is that overall when in the area of network forensics, it is not only analyzing what has happened, it is also devising prevention mechanisms, doing audits, all these things put together will give you a very secure framework in which you can operate. Does it guarantee that no hacks will happen? No, because there is always, hackers always use new techniques, new algorithms to hack your network. Okay. Therefore, it is like keeping abreast with all the latest items that are there, what are all the things that are happening, and then improving your local network based on the learnings of other organization also. With this, we complete our introduction about this course, a detailed introduction, and from now on from the next module onwards, we will look at how to provide security or how to break how hackers can break your operating systems and other network devices. Thank you very much.